Good evening, everyone. Am I audible? ये आप लोग इतने पीछे क्यों बैठे हुए हैं? So many chairs are empty here. Anyways, this will be our first class of ancient history. I think we should complete this topic in about 9 classes, not more than that. I recommend just one book. You do not have to read more than one book for ancient history. There are many options. I will provide you many options. Whatever option. Sorry? Volume is low. Hello. Hello. कम है. I think फिर माइक का प्रॉब्लम है. Anyways, वो ठीक कर देंगे. They will take care of it. Can you ask someone from Trictim to take care of the volume? So source, I am going to give you a lot of options. You can pick any one of it. I think that should be enough. But just read one book. You do not have to read more than one book. The reason I'm mentioning is because there are so many textbooks written on ancient history. इंडिया का हिस्ट्री बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग है और बहुत टाइम से डिस्कशन चल रहा है इंडियन हिस्ट्री पे. सो देर आर हंड्रेड्स ऑफ बुक्स रिटन ऑन एंशिएंट हिस्ट्री. यूपीएससी इज नॉट बाउंड टू पिक एनी ऑफ द बुक. दे कैन आस्क क्वेश्चन फ्रॉम फ्रैंकली एनीथिंग. बट नॉनदलेस आप इतना कर नहीं सकते. तो आपने बस एक ही बुक पढ़नी है. द मोस्ट प्रिफर्ड सोर्स विल बी आर एस शर्मा. आर एस शर्मा. 2 बुक्स मिलेंगी आपको मार्केट में. दोनों में कोई भी पिक कर लो. एक तो जो ओल्ड एनसीईआरटी है, यू कैन पिक ईदर दैट, और यू कैन ऑल्सो पिक द ऑक्सफोर्ड पब्लिकेशन वाले जो आर एस शर्मा है. द फ्यू एडिशंस हैव occurred, that's it. Few additions, few deletions have occurred. Both of the books are more or less same. So if you have the old NCERT, you do not have to buy this Oxford publication ancient history. If you have Oxford publication ancient history, do not have to buy old NCERT. More or less they are same. If you have Oxford publication, then the I think most important chapter you should start from the chapter on Indus Valley civilization. जो शुरू के 4-5 चैप्टर है वो आप आराम से स्किप कर सकते हो. ऑल्सो यू कैन स्किप द चैप्टर ऑफ जो कि कल्चर के बारे में, आर्किटेक्चर कल्चर के बारे में जो भी चीज़ें हैं वो आप स्किप कर सकते हो. फॉर दैट देर आर बेटर टेक्स्ट बुक्स अवेलेबल. आप वहाँ से पढ़ लो. बट अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट, अपार्ट फ्रॉम दिस फर्स्ट 4-5 चैप्टर्स ऑफ आर एस शर्मा एंड चैप्टर्स ऑन कल्चर, आर्किटेक्चर एंड एटसेट्रा, थिंग्स लाइक दैट, apart from that you should read all the chapters. So for me this is one source which is comprehensive enough, which does lot of justice to this syllabus, as well as how much relevant this topic is for examination. For me personally, I am going to use another textbook as my reference material along with R.S. Sharma. So I use 2 textbooks for these classes. One is R.S. Sharma. The other textbook which I use as a reference, but I do not recommend you to go through that book, is a book called History of Ancient and Early Medieval India by Upinder Singh. Upinder Singh is a great historian, daughter of our former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh. But she herself is a great historian. You do not have to know her by name of her father. And she has written a remarkable book, and in fact the most recent book written on ancient history of India. That is why, and I have realized that a lot of questions UPSC especially last 4-5 years, they have picked directly from this book. इस साल के भी क्वेश्चन देख लो, पिछले साल के भी देख लो. बट द रीज़न आई स्टिल डू नॉट रिकमेंड दिस बुक, बिकॉज आप जाके सिंपली किसी भी बुक शॉप में मिल जाएगा, आप देखना. इट्स अ वेरी बल्की बुक, बहुत ही ज़्यादा बड़ी किताब है. एंड एंशियंट हिस्ट्री से क्वेश्चंस आएंगे 4 से 5 क्वेश्चंस प्रीलिम्स एग्जामिनेशन में. So for 4-5 questions, again remember always it's a input-output game. How much input you are providing to something and how much output you are going to get. So the time you are going to spend on, let's say for example, finishing this book, the same time can be better utilized if you are studying polity, economy, environment, things like that. जहाँ पे क्वेश्चन आने का प्रोबेबिलिटी ज़्यादा है. एंशियंट हिस्ट्री से किसी किसी साल 1 या 2 क्वेश्चन भी आए, मैक्सिमम 5, मिनिमम 1 भी आ रखा है. There have been years where only 1 question from ancient history has been asked. But in last 3 years, they're asking at least 4 to 5 questions. So the relevance of this topic will be, relevance of this topic is about 3 to 5 questions in prelims. In mains, ancient history is not given as such. अगर आप mains paper 1 का syllabus देखोगे, then only culture is mentioned, right? So, however, UPSC interprets syllabus quite liberally, and sometimes they have asked question which cannot be categorized as a question of culture. That will be a question of history. I will discuss some of those questions. So, understanding of ancient and medieval history will be very useful in tackling questions of culture, and many of those questions, frankly, are not question of art and culture, but a question of history. I will show you a few examples, perhaps one in today's class itself, that how this question is not exactly a question of culture, but history. So one question, and not every year, one question in mains. You can expect this also. One question in mains examination, even though it is not directly given in your syllabus. There are other textbook you can refer to. For example, you can go and also refer to Tamil Nadu board का जो textbook है. Or you can also refer to old NCERT of class 6th. आप ये भी रिफर कर सकते हो, बहुत ही थिन किताब है, 2 दिन में खत्म, 1 दिन में खत्म कर लोगे, एक सिटिंग में खत्म कर लोगे, इनफैक्ट इफ यू वांट. बट फॉर मी, आई वुड रिकमेंड दैट प्लीज गो थ्रू आर.एस. शर्मा वंस, बिकॉज इट इज कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव इनफ एंड ऑल्सो नॉट बल्की इनफ कि आपको ऐसे लगे कि फॉर 4-5 क्वेश्चंस यू आर spending so much of time on this particular topic. People who have history as an optional, they should definitely read this book, History of Ancient and Early Medieval India by Upinder Singh. But जिनका नहीं है ऐसा हिस्ट्री ऑप्शनल, मुझे नहीं लगता पढ़ने की जरूरत है उपिंदर सिंह की जो टेक्स्ट बुक. एंड इन एनी केस आई थिंक lot of important information from this book I am going to discuss in this class itself. Please do not talk in the class. Okay. So source, relevance. How I'm going to take these classes, I'll briefly tell you my plan. In today's class, I'm going to discuss what we call prehistory and proto-history. I will continue this in the next class also. The next topic I will discuss is called Vedic Age. आप लोग पहले finish your conversation first. After that I will start. I will give you some time to finish your conversation. Please don't do that. The next topic I am going to discuss, that will be Vedic Age. Mahajanpat Age. And emergence of Magad. Mauryan Empire, this will be a very important topic. Mauryan Empire. The next topic which I will discuss, that will be invasions to India in ancient times. We'll talk about Satvahana period. Sangam Age. Gupta period. Reign of Harshvardhan. That in a way marks the end of discussion of ancient history. अभी हम डिस्कस करेंगे कि एंशियंट मिडिवल और मॉडर्न क्लासिफिकेशन आता कहाँ से. But there are few more topics which generally is a topic of early medieval India, but I am going to discuss it here. For example, I will talk about Pallavas, Chalukyas. I will also talk about what we call tripartite struggle. Which occurred between three kingdoms. Rashtrakutas, Palas and Pratihars. And last topic which I will discuss, that will be Imperial Cholas. So these are some of the main themes I'm going to discuss starting from prehistory and proto-history period, जो कि आज के क्लास में हम डिस्कस करेंगे. So I mainly traced how we can define Indian history into different type of ages, depending upon some of the most important events or associated with some of the most important kingdoms. But it will not just be tracing political history. We are also going to discuss how society evolved in the course of time, how economy evolved in the course of time, how religion evolved in the course of time, things like that, along with the political development. So political development will be my basis to classify a particular time period, but along with political development, we will also discuss other development, social, economic, religious. जो cultural development है, two things, जैसे for example development in architecture, music, painting, dance, all of that will be separately discussed in art and culture classes. मैं अभी बता देता हूँ. I will give you a historical basis of all of these things, but जो cultural aspect है, like features of a dance or features of architecture or painting, things like that will be discussed separately in art and culture classes. This is a class of ancient history. Anyways, let's start with a very simple discussion about how do we classify ancient history, medieval history, or modern history. What is the basis of this classification? Anyone? देखो जो हिस्ट्री राइटिंग है, हिस्ट्री राइटिंग ऑफ इंडिया, that was done by Europeans when Britishers occupied India. They got very much interested into India. There was a new department called Archaeological Survey of India. Archaeological Survey of India started a lot of digging. India has also been mentioned into some European text from ancient times, especially जो Greek text हैं, Roman text हैं. They talk about India. Alexander के account में India का mention है. So India was always a part of the popular imagination, not just among Europeans, but across many parts of the world. Right? Ancient India was very famous across many civilizations, mainly because it was a very prosperous region. In fact, it was the most prosperous region, not one of the, it was the most prosperous region. And I have a basis of saying that. I'm not just saying it without any data. There was a article published by a magazine, The Economist. Economist is a very famous, reputed international magazine. Economist had done a research that they had calculated GDP of ancient world country-wise. And they did this calculation for every century, for first century, second century. And they found out that they did this calculation from 1st to 19th century. And from 1st to 15th or 16th century, India was either at top or at second position. In fact, it was only at second position twice or thrice. Every time India was at top and China was at second. Right? So in terms of GDP, in terms of economic growth, India was always at the top, with few exceptions where China was, and even in that case when China was at the top, India was at the second position. So I have a basis of saying that India was a very prosperous region. And because of that, whenever foreigners came to India, they wrote extensively about it. And India was part of popular imagination in China, in Sri Lanka, in Europe also. In fact, when Columbus was finding this sea route, he was actually trying to explore India. And when he reached America, not exactly New York or California, but when he reached North America, he thought that he has reached India. And he called the people Indians. And even today they are called Indians. American Indians जो indigenous people हैं, Red Indians या American Indians जो हैं. But that comes from India, that he was looking for India and he thought, mistakenly he thought that he has found India. Vasco da Gama, of course, found the trade route, right? So India was part of popular imagination. So when Europeans came to India, especially when Britishers now, they became the paramount power in India, they invested a lot into finding about Indian history. So they started writing about ancient and medieval India. तो उनका जो classification था, the classification which they did, that was basis of religion. They called the entire historical period of India as Hindu period, Muslim period, and British period. So there are many problems with this classification. First problem is that using religious affiliation of elites or religious affiliation of ruling class cannot become the basis of historical classification. जैसे even in ancient India, there are many rulers who patronized Buddhism and Jainism rather than Hinduism. And even if they are not patronizing, there are many people who actually practiced other than Hinduism, such as Buddhism or Jainism. तो ये जो classification है, this was not a very good classification. Same is also true for medieval India, that you have Delhi Sultanate and you have Mughals. First of all, Delhi Sultanate ruled part of North India. At some time, they ruled a much larger territory. Mughals also under Akbar or under Aurangzeb, they were able to rule over a much larger part of India. But again, we are talking about the religious affiliation of ruling elites. Significant chunk of population, they are following different religions, right? So using the religious affiliation of elites and ruling class, that cannot be a very good classification. The other reason is, of course, that it reeks of communalism. There is clearly a project here to generate communal consciousness within the society. And Britishers, by the way, they became very successful also in doing it. But nonetheless, this classification was rejected by many Indian historians and in fact many European scholars themselves. So then they try to classify history as how European history has been classified. Ancient Europe, medieval Europe, and modern Europe. They have their own set of criterias. But we adopt not just political criterias, but also social and economic criterias, that how politics changed, how society changed, how economy changed. So the initial phases of consolidation jo hai, that where large empires existed, such as Mauryan Empire, under Ashoka, entire India was unified with exception of perhaps southern kingdoms and with northeast. But, and by the way, not just India, we can talk about the entire Indian subcontinent region for that matter, which includes Pakistan, Afghanistan also. That all of that was part of one political entity. It already is a geographical entity. Indian subcontinent, when I use this word, Indian subcontinent, then I'm already talking about a geographical entity. But it also became a political entity when Ashoka was ruling India, or when, well, let's say, Vikramaditya Chandragupta II was ruling India. At least a major part of India was united. So in about 7th century, you find that you no longer have empires. You have regional kingdoms. You have emergence of feudalism in the society. Feudalism becomes a very important economic aspect. So not just polity changed, political setup changed, but economy also changed. And based on that, society also changed. A lot of changes happened in the society also. वो भी हम discuss करेंगे. So that became the basis of end of ancient history. So the end of ancient history है, often we use, there is not exact 1 year, but entire century, जो 7th century है, that end of 6th century and entire 7th century, that marks in a way the end of ancient India and emergence of what we call early medieval India. So this classification is also now being accepted by many historians, that ancient and early medieval India. So in these classes, I'm going to discuss ancient as well as early medieval India. Early medieval India is often considered from 7th to 12th century or from 8th to 12th century. And then when Turks came to India, when Turks invaded India and set up the first Islamic kingdoms into India, which led to basically establishment of Delhi Sultanate, and later when Mughals came to India, which became Mughal Empire. So that marks the medieval India, जो medieval India में पढ़ते हैं. So starting of medieval India can be the early 13th century. In 1206, Delhi Sultanate, not exactly Delhi Sultanate, but Sultanate was established by Qutbuddin Aibak. And however, his capital was Lahore. That capital was shifted to Delhi by his son-in-law Iltutmish, who became the next ruler. And from that time, Delhi remained the capital for next entire Sultanate as well as for Mughals also, with exception of Muhammad bin Tughlaq for some time. So more or less, Delhi remained the center of power, and even today Delhi is center of power. But there is a just historical legacy. ऐसा नहीं है कि दिल्ली का कुछ special place है. Delhi had some strategic advantages. This is a historical legacy that Delhi was chosen as a capital after independence. In fact, one can argue that we can have different capital rather than Delhi. But Delhi remains because of historical legacy. तो ये जो invasion of Turks हैं and establishment of Islamic kingdom, which by the way changed society a lot, it led to a lot of development into society, in economy also. That is what medieval India is all about. Late medieval India or simply medieval India. So no longer it is just religion, which basically signifies ancient, medieval or modern. And by the way, death of Aurangzeb often marks the end of medieval period, because with death of Aurangzeb now, Mughal ka jo power hai, they were never able to recover that power. And from 1707 till 1757, lot of changes happened. Result of those changes are that many powers emerged. First Marathas, but they were also not able to consolidate much. Later Britishers, and they were very successful in their political expansion. So what happened in Battle of Plassey? Modern history की classes हुई हैं. So what happened in Battle of Plassey in 1757 and Battle of Buxar in 1764? That paved the way that now Britishers emerged as the most important power in India. तो ये जो पूरा period of about 50 years है, that in a way marks the end of medieval period and emergence of what we call modern India, where Britishers became the most important power in this India. But again, this is not just about political development, but other factors also. So first and foremost, the classification of ancient, medieval, modern जो है, there are many bases of that. Religion can be one basis, but not a very important one. Now, second thing, that चलो मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री के बारे में फिर भी बहुत सारे सोर्सेज हमारे पास अवेलेबल हैं. लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स, न्यूज़पेपर्स तब तक आ रखे हैं, बहुत सारी चीज़ें एज थिंग्स आर हैपनिंग दे आर कवर्ड इन न्यूज़पेपर. सो वी हैव लॉट ऑफ कैन यू आस्क समवन, बिकॉज ऑनलाइन स्टूडेंट्स आर ऑल्सो कंप्लेनिंग अबाउट लो वॉइस. एक बार बोलना कि ये वॉइस कम है यहाँ पे. सो वी हैव लॉट ऑफ सोर्सेज टू नो अबाउट मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री, स्पेशली न्यूज़पेपर्स, आर्काइव्स, लेटर्स. राइट नाउ लेट्स से फॉर एग्जांपल, आज अभी सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट इवेंट क्या हो रहा है? रशिया यूक्रेन वॉर हो रहा है, राइट? तो रशिया यूक्रेन वॉर आज से 10 साल बाद अगर ये वॉर खत्म हो जाता है, लेट्स होप दैट, आज से 10 साल बाद जब ये हिस्ट्री टेक्स्ट बुक में लिखा जाएगा, व्हेन इट विल बी डिस्क्राइब्ड, देन फर्स्ट थिंग विच विल बी डिस्क्राइब्ड इज दैट व्हाट हैपेंड, कि व्हाट एग्जैक्टली हैपेंड. तो पहले तो आपको इस चीज पे आना पड़ेगा, इस चीज पे एक सहमति होनी चाहिए, दैट देयर शुड बी सम सॉर्ट ऑफ कंसेंसस दैट दिस इज व्हाट हैपेंड. And the second level of analysis will be why it happened. For example, why Russia-Ukraine war started and why it progressed the way it should, right? So that will be again part of historians to analyze those things. So first thing is, and by the way, both of these things, the political biases हैं, that come very much into, that play a very important role. Historians have their own biases. They will look at particular set of event with their own political ideology. Same set of event that will be explained by one historian, group of historians in different manner, by another group of historians in different manner. जैसे मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री के केस में तो बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट है, बट एंशियंट हिस्ट्री के केस में जो सबसे पहला चैलेंज तो यही है, दैट लेट्स एस्टैब्लिश व्हाट हैपेंड, बिकॉज यू डू नॉट हैव सोर्सेज हियर, राइट? कैन एनीवन टेल मी दैट विच इज द फर्स्ट टेक्स्ट बुक रिटन इन इंडिया विच कैन बी कॉल्ड अ बुक रिटन विथ पर्सपेक्टिव ऑन हिस्ट्री? Sorry? Not Rig Veda. Rig Veda is not a book or anything associated with history. Rig Veda is very much a religious work. Rastarangini. That's perfect. So the first book, जिसके बारे में हम बोल सकते हैं कि चलो हिस्ट्री एक बेसिस है इसका, that it is a work of history. By the way, उसको भी लेके काफी सारा डिबेट कर सकते हैं, but it is a work of history. That is a book called Rastarangini, which basically traces the history of Kashmir. That book was compiled in early medieval time, 10th 11th century. So before that, जो भी books लिखी हुई हैं, वो सारे books historical perspective से नहीं लिखी हुई हैं, वो stories हैं, वो dramas हैं. And to make sense of those stories and dramas, that is the job of historian. So many things happen. History as a term of English means that everything which has happened in the past, that is called history, right? But can we know everything what has happened? We cannot. We actually need to know sources. We need to find sources. That if we are saying that something happened, then how do we know that something happened? We need to find sources for that. Right? तो जहां पे भी आपके पास written sources available हैं, that written records are available, that is called historical period. And whenever written sources are not available, तो जहां पे written sources नहीं है, क्या source होगा फिर? Archaeology, the only source which you have right now, then archaeology that do excavation. Archaeology will not tell you the political setup, right? It will not tell you कौन king है, क्या लड़ाई चल रही है, but it can tell a lot about perhaps economic basis of particular settlement. It can also tell you something about social differences. मान लो कि कुछ हमको settlement मिलता है with lot of riches. At the same time you find settlement जहाँ पे hardly mud houses हैं, brick houses हैं, mud houses हैं. तो brick houses represent कि people who had resources, they made brick houses, but जो mud houses हैं, they were poor people. तो archaeology can also tell you something about society and something about economy, but it cannot tell you a lot of things. So wherever your only source is archaeology, that part is called prehistory, right? And between prehistory and historical period, there is another term which is used in many cases, including India, that is called proto-history. Now the term proto-history means that written sources are available, but we do not know what does that mean. The very good example is Indus Valley civilization, that even though people of Indus Valley knew how to write, they knew language in written form, but we have not been able to decipher it. So this period is called proto-history. Before Indus Valley civilization, by the way, once we decipher that script, perhaps in future we will be able to decipher that script. Once we decipher that script, then that will also be part of historical period. तो उससे पहले जो भी है, that is called prehistory, that you do not have any written source available as such. Whatever source you have, these are archaeological sources. And the moment you have written sources available, which have been deciphered, they will be called period of historical period now. And even if you have written sources but have not been deciphered, that is called proto-history period, right? So the first thing I'm going to start with, so let me briefly tell you, ये जो सारे themes हैं इसका क्या मतलब है. I will explain all of that in detail. In prehistory, I'm going to talk about जो early human beings in Indian subcontinent है, who were hunter-gatherers mainly. Their economic activity was hunting and gathering. तो उनके बारे में whatever information we have, this will be the largest period. But also I'm going to give a very less time to this topic, frankly, because important भी नहीं है. और जितना information I can give you, like in, let's say for example 1.5 hours, that should be more than enough. But I am mainly going to our major topic in today's class will be the proto-history period, which is what Indus Valley civilization is all about. So we will start our discussion about Indus Valley civilization in today's class. This is the first urban civilization of India, and not just of India, perhaps one of the first urban civilizations anywhere in the world. Then, however, this civilization declined. This civilization का जो पूरा mature phase है, the time period here is from 2600 BC to 1900 BC. So before I go into depth of all of these topics, let me give you a timeline of all the major events which I have written down here. That prehistory period to छोड़ दो, I'm talking about the proto-history period. This is about this. That Indus Valley civilization का जो urban phase है, Indus Valley civilization can also be divided into 3 phases. But I'm talking about the urban phase. उसका जो timeline है, that is from 2600 BC to 1900 BC. Then जो Vedic age है, Vedic age can be further divided into 2 parts. Early Vedic age and later Vedic age, which basically marks the coming of a group of tribe called Aryans who came to Indian subcontinent, settled into India, and now from first they settled around northwest frontier, and from there they spread to entire India. So early Vedic period basically marks when Rig Veda was compiled, and later Vedic period marks when other Vedas were compiled. So this will be from about 1500 to 1100 BC, and this will be about 1100 to 600 BC in terms of timeline. Then after a gap of about 900 years, Indus Valley civilization declined in 1900 BC. And then there is a gap of many centuries when second phase of cities emerged into India, second urban civilization, which occurred during Mahajanpad phase. तो जो महाजनपद है, इसका जो timeline है, I can call this timeline to be about 600 to 300 BC. And जो Mauryan Empire है, that out of all these, there are 16 Mahajanpads, 16 kingdoms in ancient India emerged in different part of the country. Out of those 16, Magad became the most powerful, and Magad in fact unified, जो Magad के rulers हैं, they unified the entire India for the first time under Mauryans. So Chandragupta Maurya may have become ruler in 321 BC. However, the last ruler was killed by 187 BC. Then जो invasions of India in ancient time and जो Satvahana period है, both of that, it's simultaneous to each other in different part of the country. I will show you a lot of maps to have some sort of visual reference. But invasions to India occurred from northwest frontier. Satvahana kingdom emerged in Deccan region, जो अभी modern Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh region होगा. So this is from about 2nd century BC to 2nd century AD. A period of about 400 years. Then जो Sangam age है in the region of Tamil Nadu, Kerala and southern Karnataka, southern Andhra Pradesh, that again also represents a period of about 300 BC to 300 AD. The reason it is called Sangam age because जो सबसे important source of history यहाँ पे, that is a type of literature which is called Sangam literature, the ancient work in Tamil literature, the most old work in Tamil literature. जो Gupta period है, that marks from 4th to 6th century. But mainly by 6th century their power had declined. Age of Harshvardhan will be about 607 to 647 AD. And similarly, जो Pallavas and Chalukyas हैं, they remained very powerful from about 6th to 9th century AD. This tripartite struggle which went on between these three kingdoms, that also happened from about 9th to 10th century. And जो imperial Cholas हैं, they became very powerful in 11th to 12th century. In fact, even in 10th century. So 10th to 12th century. So more or less, this is the timeline. I'm going to talk about all of them in a lot of detail. But more or less, this is the timeline of major set of events from ancient India. Before I start today's class with prehistory, let's start with the first thing, all the sources of history. Give this heading, sources of history. So in ancient times, what are the sources available to us? To know about ancient history, what are the sources available to us? तो सबसे पहला जो है वो तो written work ही है. But I told you that the first written work जो है, which can be considered as a work of history, that belongs to 10th 11th century. तो एंशियंट इंडिया में जो रिटन वर्क्स हैं, दे आर नॉट एग्जैक्टली वर्क ऑफ हिस्ट्री, बट जो भी वर्क है, दैट वर्क मस्ट हैव बीन रिटन इनटू अ पर्टिकुलर टाइमलाइन विथ उस टाइम का सोसाइटी कैसा होगा, इकोनॉमी कैसा होगा, ज्योग्राफी कैसा है, थिंग्स लाइक दैट. किसी पर्टिकुलर सेटअप में वो बुक लिखी हुई है. जो हिस्टोरियंस का जॉब होगा टू फाइंड आउट रिलेवेंट इंफॉर्मेशन फ्रॉम दिस बुक्स and to use it as a source of history, right? So what can be those sources? You tell me. What can be sources in the case of written work? Now, जो Vedas हैं, Vedas are religious work, but nonetheless, lot of information from Vedas, especially about religion, about society, about culture, we can find out from all the 4 Vedas. We will talk about Vedic literature even in more detail जब हम Vedic age पढ़ेंगे. So Vedas can be a very important source. So can be epics, by the way. And we have 2 very famous epics, right? Mahabharata and Ramayana. Now Mahabharata and Ramayana का जो timeline है, that exactly when it was compiled, the earliest period of time, that's a very difficult question to answer. तो कोई भी हिस्टोरियन यही बोलेगा कि दे विल टेल यू अ रेंज ऑफ टाइम दैट मे बी द अर्लीस्ट वर्जन ऑफ महाभारत और रामायण मे हैव एग्जिस्टेड इन 600 or 700 BC, but the latest version was also that was compiled perhaps in 11th 12th century AD. तो एक चीज़ तो पहले सबसे पहली चीज़ क्लियर होनी चाहिए कि देर आर मेनी वर्जन ऑफ रामायण, देर आर मेनी वर्जन ऑफ महाभारत ऑल्सो. जैसे एक सिंपल सा स्टोरी से मैं बता सकता हूँ कि द अर्लीस्ट वर्जन विच वी थिंक रामायण इज that was compiled by Valmiki in Sanskrit, right? In Valmiki Ramayana, जो राम है, he is Maryada Purushottam. He is not as such God. He is Maryada Purushottam. He is the bestest, he is the epitome of human being, and that is why he should be worshipped. But in Ramcharitmanas, when Tulsidas writes during Mughal period, Ram is now avatar of Vishnu, and Ram is a god. So, and by the way, between this timeline, you have like lot of other variants of lot of variants of Ramayana, and so is also true for Mahabharata. In one of the version of Ramayana, Ravan has been portrayed as a sympathetic character. So there are many versions available. अब जो historian का job क्या होगा, that how do we find this work and how do we extract useful information as a historical analysis. Thankfully, history writing in India has been occurring for more than a century now. So more or less lot of things जो useful हैं वो बहुत सारी चीज़ें extract कर भी ली गई हैं, and we have a very well established picture. So epics can be a source. So can be many other texts such as Puranas or Dharm Shastras. So Dharm Shastras are work on morality basically. Then another written source can be account of foreign travelers. और फॉरेन ट्रैवलर्स का अकाउंट देखो बहुत यूजफुल इसलिए भी होता है बिकॉज दे विल नॉट जस्ट राइट अबाउट द पॉलिटिकल सेटअप, बट दे विल ऑल्सो टॉक अबाउट थिंग्स एज दे विटनेस, राइट, अबाउट सोसाइटी, वेरियस थिंग्स ऑफ सोसाइटी विच दे फाउंड इंटरेस्टिंग. जैसे अभी भी आप ट्रैवल करने जाते हो तो ट्रैवलॉग में आप लिखते हो ना, यू फाउंड समथिंग इंटरेस्टिंग. सो फॉरेन ट्रैवलर्स विल नॉट जस्ट राइट अबाउट किंग्स एंड क्वींस, दे विल ऑल्सो राइट अबाउट in general the social setup. So that becomes also important source, and we have few foreign travelers in ancient India. For example, you have Megasthenes, who was an ambassador in the court of Chandragupta Maurya, or you have Fahian, who came from China, you have Zhuangzang again, who came from China. So there are many foreign travelers in ancient India who wrote about India, studied Indian text and wrote about India in their accounts. So these are some of the major sources. But apart from that, archaeology is again a very very important source, and especially जहाँ पे आपके पास कुछ भी अवेलेबल नहीं है, कोई रिटन सोर्स अवेलेबल नहीं है, तो आपको आर्कियोलॉजी से काम चलाना पड़ेगा. यू विल हैव टू डू एक्सकेवेशन. एक्सकेवेशन के बाद जो भी मटेरियल गुड्स, जो भी सेटलमेंट आपको पता चलता है, यू हैव टू डू अ कार्बन डेटिंग एनालिसिस दैट हाउ ओल्ड इट इज. आफ्टर दैट यू आर गोइंग टू, जो फाइंडिंग्स है उन फाइंडिंग्स को आप इंटरप्रेट करोगे. तो हिस्ट्री कैसे डेवलप, एज अ डिसिप्लिन कैसे डेवलप होगा, जो भी फाइंडिंग्स होंगे दोज फाइंडिंग्स विल बी पब्लिश्ड. Based on those findings, different historians, they are going to publish their research paper. That research paper has to be peer reviewed by other historians. The one which is the most accepted, that jiska acceptance sabse zyada hai, that will also become part of, in fact, our curriculum, right? So in lot of cases you are going to find that we do not have exact answer. We have lot of debates surrounding it. We are trying to settle those debates, but in some cases those debates are not settled as of now. हम डिस्कस करेंगे वो भी चीज़ है. तो आर्कियोलॉजी इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट सोर्स. कीप ये लिखते रहना. अनदर वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट सोर्स इज एपिग्राफी. कैन एनीवन टेल मी व्हाट एग्जैक्टली इज एपिग्राफी? स्टडी ऑफ इंस्क्रिप्शंस. एग्जैक्टली. जो किंग्स एंड क्वींस थे, kings and queens often, if and it does not have to be just kings and queens, but let's say for example anyone, merchant group perhaps, that if they achieved something of significance, now that can be winning a war, that can be doing some repair work, starting the construction of a temple, or doing some relief work, any type of things, they often got it inscribed, and those inscriptions have survived even today. So they got it inscribed perhaps on rocks or on pillars, and that is what epigraphical analysis is all about. So epigraphy includes a lot of linguistic analysis also, because languages which were used in ancient India, we do not use the same, even though in some cases we do, but not exactly the same thing. Or even if we are using the same language, we definitely not are using the same script. That should be very clear. There is a difference between language and script. Language is what is our spoken form of communication. Script is how we write it. Rules and regulations which is followed while writing, that is what script is all about. जैसे एक सिंपल सा एग्जाम्पल ले लो. I can write my name is Abhishek in Roman script also. This script is what Roman script is, but I can also write it in Hindi, which is Devanagari script, right? I can write the same thing in Hindi in Devanagari script. I can use other script also. So I can use one script to write many languages. So the difference between script and language, that should be very clear. So in epigraphy, first thing we need to do, कि जो script है वो आपको पता होना चाहिए. That what is this script, which script has been used. Because frankly, we do not use the same script. In ancient India, we used script like Brahmi and Kharoshthi, which we do not use it right now. Indus Valley के time में जो script क्या था वो उनको पता भी नहीं है कि what is that script and what are the rules they followed. But the most ancient script which we have been able to decipher, that belongs to Mauryan period, that is Brahmi script, right? But using Brahmi script, you will find language as Sanskrit. That things are written in Sanskrit, however not in Devanagari, but in Brahmi script. तो पहले समझने के लिए पहले Brahmi script पता होना चाहिए. तो epigraphy involves lot of linguistic analysis also, right? And epigraphy में बहुत सारी चीज़ें बढ़ा चढ़ा के भी लिखी होंगी, because often जो भी चीज़ें जो inscription है, that will be done by some court poet. King का कोई poet होगा जो king के achievement को और बढ़ा चढ़ा के लिखेगा. So historians का एक job ये भी होगा that how do we actually find out the important information or perhaps truthful information. Often it is very difficult. You'll have to collect evidences from other sources also before coming to a conclusion. But in the absence of other sources, आपके पास फिर और कोई option बचता नहीं है, right? Then another important source can be numismatics. Now what is numismatics? Study of coins, right? Numismatics is study of coins. अब that can also tell you a lot about a particular setup. जैसे number of coins अगर बहुत ज़्यादा हैं, then we are talking about a prosperous region perhaps, right? Number of coins का quality कैसा है, किस चीज़ का बना हुआ है, that also tells a lot about prosperity of a kingdom. जैसे we know that during Gupta period, India was a very prosperous region because they issued the largest number of gold coins, right? तो ये coinage study is very important to know about economy, very important to know about trade routes also. For example, in Tamil Nadu, in Kerala, we find coins which originated in Rome, right? We find Roman coins in Tamil Nadu and Kerala. अब ये कैसे हुआ होगा? Trade के द्वारा. So people in ancient India, they are trading with ancient Roman Empire. That is how we find gold coins which originated into Roman Empire with Roman marks, insignia, and all that. So coinage study, that is also very important to know about trade routes, to know about economy. And one more source, which recently has become quite useful. You are not going to find about them in your standard textbook, but this is called population genetics. Especially in ancient India, it is very important because ancient world is about migration of people from one location to another location. So when did a group of people migrate to, and where did they migrate to? How can we know that? Because even today we can do genetic analysis, and using genetic analysis we can find out that how one group of people are related or not related to another group of people. Not an analysis on individual level, but at population level. This is called population genetics. And population genetics में पिछले 10-15 सालों में बहुत development हुआ है. And because of that, many questions which we did not know exact answer, but now we are actually finding more and more accurate answer. We will talk about some of those questions. So population genetics has been quite useful, and that has also been a very important source of history. Krishna has a question that how script is different from language. I hope that is clear. कि script and language कैसे different होंगे. Scripts, basically what written form of communication is used, and language will be what spoken form of communication is used. So any question till now? I will explain what is AD and what is BC. I will explain that also. तो जो हम टाइमलाइन है, जो ग्रेगोरियन कैलेंडर हम यूज करते हैं, we define this timeline as BC and AD. कोई भी कैलेंडर, it has to start from somewhere. Some year it has to start from some year. In case of Gregorian calendar, which is the most popular calendar which is used across the world, that marks the birth of Christ. Birth of Christ is considered that happened in 1st century, and that becomes the starting of calendar. So जो BC है, that represents before Christ, and AD represents Anno Domini, which basically translates to the era of the Lord, right? So this became controversial. Some historians felt that this has a lot of religious significance. So we should not use BC or AD. We should use something else, BCE and CE, which is before Common Era and Common Era. So BC becomes BCE, which is before Common Era, no longer before Christ, before Common Era, and CE becomes Common Era. That let's use this because इसका जो religious significance है नहीं है. But then a counter argument happened that at least in case of BC and AD, it was very much clear that why this calendar is starting from 1st century AD. But in BCE and CE classification, it is not clear. And now you have to actually go and search it, and you find that birth of Christ has been such a significance that there is a new calendar now, which further in fact reinforces this religious significance. So let's go back to BC and AD. So I'm going to use BC and AD rather than BCE and CE. तो जो BCE and BC है, they are same, CE and AD they are same. And in most of the textbook, they are going to use this classification of before Christ and Anno Domini, right? So all calendar has to start from some year. In case of Gregorian calendar, the 1st century BC, that will be 1st BC. For example, there is no 0 AD here. In Gregorian calendar, कोई 0 year कुछ भी नहीं है. You have 1 BC and the next year is 1 AD, right? Before that, like a number line, negative number कैसे होता है? -1, -2, -3 ऐसे होता है ना number line negative number पे. तो ऐसे ही this is 2 BC, 3 BC, 4 BC. Get the idea. And here again you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that is how timelines are divided. कोई भी calendar कहीं ना कहीं से शुरू होगा. That there will be a starting point. That starting point has to mark something important. In this case, this importance is birth of Christ. I have a theory that if you include ancient history, medieval history, and art and culture, more or less UPSC asks about 15 to 20, if I include all of that, ancient, medieval, art and culture, and modern history, then UPSC asks about 18 to 20 question. If I include 4 sections, ancient, medieval, art and culture, and modern history, and जो individual classification है, that keeps on changing in different year. जैसे in 2022, there were 4 questions from ancient history, 5 from medieval, and 4 questions from art and culture. Almost same classification was also used in 2021, 4, 5, and 3. But उससे पहले in 2020 it was 4, 2, and 4. In 2018, just 1 question of ancient history, 1 of medieval, 6 of modern, 6 of art and culture, and about 9, 10 questions of modern history. Right? So that is why I told you that number of question can vary from 1 to 5, maximum 5, not more than that. I was talking about sources. There can be literary sources, such as you have Vedas, epics, Buddhist and Jain literature, by the way, forgot about that. Buddhist and Jain literature, Sangam text, Kannada, Telugu literature, ancient poetry, dramas, biographies, although they are not exactly works of history, but we can find relevant information from them. And then account of foreign writers. Archaeological sources, their interpretation, that is again a very important source. Epigraphy, which is study of inscriptions, deciphering them, which includes linguistic analysis, right? The numismatics, which is study of coinage, and population genetics, which basically studies how one group of population are same or different from another group of population. So जो ancient text हैं, they are found in a format like this. On this ancient palm leaf manuscript, there are many libraries which have even this, not exactly original work, because even though a lot of this work, जैसे Vedic जो literature है, initially it was passed orally, rather than compiled on a piece of paper or somewhere, it was passed orally. So how old are Vedas? It is very difficult to answer this question. But जो compilation है, that compilation may have started occurring around 700, 600 BC. But how old they exactly are, it's very difficult question to answer. But ancient work will be in this such type of palm leaf manuscript. जो inscriptions होंगे, you can find inscriptions either on rocks or on pillars also. That on rocks things are engraved. Those engravings have survived even today. And on pillars also. But first you have to actually understand that which script has been used. Only then you will be able to understand what is exactly written here. So they also play a very important role in deciphering ancient history. So such type of analysis of inscription, that is called epigraphy. Then you have coinage. Coins will often represent the quality, what they are made of, what is the material. If it is a gold coin, how pure is that gold? Often coins have pictures of images of the king in different poses, or perhaps images of religious deities. So that tells you about the prevailing religion also. So even numismatics is also a very important role to know about history of ancient India. And then of course you have population genetics. So give the first heading, prehistory. Prehistory and proto-history. Just write it down. Give this heading, prehistory and proto-history. Just write down few things here. Prehistory signifies period of time before written records. Prehistory signifies period of time before written records. Written records. Proto-history signifies a period. Proto-history signifies a period. Signifies a period during which a culture or civilization had some written record, but they are yet to be interpreted and understood. Understood. The prehistory, write down next bullet point. The prehistory period of India. The prehistory period of India, known as Stone Age, can be classified on the basis of geological age, stone tools, and subsistence base. So let me explain first what does it mean. We are talking about our ancestors, not necessarily sapiens, by the way. We as species are called Homo sapiens, right? सबसे पहले तो ये clear होना चाहिए. Our species name is sapiens. We belong to a genus category which is called Homo. Homo genus has had many species in the past, but they have not survived. For example, Homo genus, a species called Neanderthals, they belong to Homo genus. They may have lived around the region of Europe, Eastern Europe. Then a group of species called Denisovans that belong to the same genus, they also may have existed. Homo erectus, who lived before sapiens, when we actually became first, we know that we evolved from chimpanzees. Our closest relative in terms of evolution is chimpanzee. So from walking on 4 legs, when we started walking on 2 legs, and this erectus, we start becoming erected now, hence the word Homo erectus. So if I'm talking about Stone Age, then I'm including all of the species of Homo genus. Because the sapiens hain, all the modern sapiens, us, we all of are a result of a migration which occurred from Africa about 70,000 years ago. All of sapiens history is history of out of migration of Africa which happened in 70,000 years ago. What it means is that ancient human beings, they originated in Africa as a continent. They may have attempted to migrate before 70,000 years ago, but they were not successful. One successful migration, and how do we know that? Again, because of population genetics. All of our genes, especially the genes which we carry from our mother side, इसको mitochondrial DNA बोलते हैं. बायोलॉजी की क्लास हुई है? बायोलॉजी की क्लास में माइटोकॉन्ड्रियल डीएनए के बारे में बताया था. तो जो माइटोकॉन्ड्रियल डीएनए है, वी ओनली एंड ओनली इनहेरिट फ्रॉम आवर मदर, नॉट फ्रॉम आवर फादर. सो माइटोकॉन्ड्रियल डीएनए जो है, दैट कैन बी ट्रेस्ड टू अफ्रीका. And we also can actually pinpoint a timeline that how this migration out of migration from Africa may have occurred. तो जो सबसे पहली चीज़ ये क्वेश्चन जो आंसर करता है, ये जो पूरा कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ रेसिज्म, कास्ट, रिलीजन, सुप्रीमेसी बेस्ड ऑन ऑल दिस आइडियाज, they are utterly stupid. They just have a political motive. Any type of political ideology which focuses on supremacy of one group over another group based on race, based on ethnicity, based on religion, based on caste, they are frankly stupid. It has no scientific basis. Because all of human beings, frankly, our genesis goes back to migration, out of Africa migration, which happened about 70,000 years ago. But other species of जो hominid species hai, they may have lived in many parts of the world. So when we talk about stone ages, we are also including them, not just sapiens. So we are talking about group of people who were involved into hunting and gathering. And that is why I'm using the word subsistence here. Subsistence basically means कि अभी हमारे लिए देखो बहुत सारी चीज़ें given है. Lot of things we take for granted. You do not have to worry about the next meal. You know that you are going to get your next meal. In fact, you can eat whatever you want. At least many of us. Even today for India, for many of us it is not true. But for many of us that is true. But in ancient times, and I'm not just talking about ancient times, I'm actually talking about prehistorical period, that this was not for guaranteed. We are talking about group of people who hunted and they were fearful of animals. Animals were much more ferocious, much more powerful than human beings. So they often feared these animals. So rather than hunting, they also involved into gathering. They gathered food, fruits, vegetables, etc., whatever they could find in wild. They gathered those food for next meal or perhaps for some difficult condition. That is why I'm using the word subsistence. Subsistence मतलब होता है कि आप survival के लिए जो काम करते हो. So here we are not talking about prosperity. We are talking about survival. That human beings का survival जो है वो किस चीज पे dependent है. Based on that, you can classify entire Stone Age into 3 phases. First is called Paleolithic phase, second is called Mesolithic phase, and third is called Neolithic phase. So Paleolithic phase, that signifies the largest time period. In fact, that time period will be Paleolithic phase can be further divided into 3 categories: Lower Paleolithic phase, Middle Paleolithic phase, and Upper Paleolithic phase. Lower Paleolithic phase may have started 2 million years ago and continued till 100,000 BC. The Middle Paleolithic phase started from 100,000 BC to 40,000 BC. But it is actually during Upper Paleolithic age that अभी तक ये जो पूरा time period है, by the way, this time period, this signified a very cold climate. Earth was going through what we call ice age. Ice age थोड़ा बहुत पढ़ा होगा. So that signified a very cold climate. This climate was not suitable for human beings to survive and prosper. But as climate became warmer, that started happening in upper and continued during Mesolithic phase. As climate started becoming warmer, now climate became more suitable for survival. Human beings spread into different part of the world. They migrated from one location to another location. Again, they still are hunter and gatherers. And to hunt and gather, they use stone tools. And based on the shape and size and sophistication of stone tools, you have again this classification: Paleolithic, Mesolithic, or Neolithic. Paleo means old, lithic means stone. We are talking about the oldest type of stone tools. So the Paleolithic settlements into India hai, we find in many parts of the India. सबसे 2-3 साइट आपको बस यहाँ पे पता होना चाहिए. जैसे फॉर एग्जाम्पल यू हैव मिर्जापुर इन उत्तर प्रदेश. दैट इज अ वेरी फेमस साइट because it represents Paleolithic, Mesolithic as well as Neolithic settlement. So in Paleolithic settlement, just to give you some sort of what type of stone tools I'm talking about. So stone tools which are not very regular, they are very irregular shape. Human beings have not evolved their engineering techniques that they are making fine tools, refined tools, which is perhaps better at hunting. About lower Paleolithic age, human beings had also discovered fire and utilization of fire. That must have helped them a lot because they were very fearful of wild animals, but that fear definitely decreased because of discovery of fire. But in Mesolithic period, we find that stone tools became much more finer. They became sharper, smaller, and now they are as a hunting tool, they are better. They can pierce animal skin very easily. Right? So some sort of engineering techniques definitely was used during Mesolithic period. Climate has also become warmer, by the way, at this point of time. So human beings now have spread into different parts of the world. And that is also the time period when we find evidences of early domestication of animals as well as the earliest agriculture. प्रॉपर एग्रीकल्चर हैज नॉट स्टार्टेड. अभी भी जो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट सबसिस्टेंस एक्टिविटी है दैट इज हंटिंग एंड गैदरिंग. बट जो अर्लीस्ट फॉर्म ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर है दैट स्टार्टेड इन मेसोलिथिक पीरियड, right? And we find again many Mesolithic sites across India. The most famous will be Bhimbetka in Madhya Pradesh, a very very famous site. यहाँ पे आपके पास कोई नेचुरल ऐसे आर्टिफिशियल प्लेस बनाना भी शुरू किया नहीं है ह्यूमन बींग्स ने. जो भी नेचुरल प्लेसेस हैं देयर यू हैव टू स्टे. सो द मोस्ट फेमस नेचुरल प्लेस विल बी caves. These are natural formations which save you from rain, any type of extremes of weather, and also from attack from wild animals. So caves were natural shelter for human beings, but they did not stay at one location. They often moved from one location to another location to find different type of food. तो ये जो क्लासिफिकेशन है पैलियोलिथिक, मेसोलिथिक एंड नियोलिथिक, एंड जो नियोलिथिक सेटलमेंट है बाय द वे, नियोलिथिक सेटलमेंट नाउ represents the first village settlement. That human beings, rather than hunting and gathering, now they started settling themselves into a small settlement. It must have started with a very small settlement. जैसे इंडिया के केस में, नॉट इंडिया के केस में, पूरे इंडियन सबकॉन्टिनेंट के केस में, whenever I'm talking about ancient India, I'm not just talking about India, I'm talking about the entire subcontinent. Because this subcontinent has a very common history. And by the way, UPSC ने एक बड़ा बढ़िया क्वेश्चन पूछा था लास्ट ईयर, that why do we use the term Indian subcontinent? देखा होगा आपने क्वेश्चन. तो उसका जो एक जो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट होगा आंसर, ये ज्योग्राफी का क्वेश्चन है बाय द वे, तो आंसर भी ज्योग्राफी से पहले आएगा. दैट वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट अ रीजन विच इज बाउंड बाय हिमालय एंड इंडियन ओशन. मैप से आपको बनाना है, बट इट इज नॉट जस्ट अबाउट ज्योग्राफी, इट इज ऑल्सो अबाउट शेयर्ड हिस्ट्री. वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट ग्रुप ऑफ पीपल हु हैव अ शेयर्ड हिस्ट्री. दैट इज वाई we use the word Indian subcontinent, and also we have a lot of cultural similarities in the entire subcontinent region. So apart from geographical factor, you should also highlight historical and cultural factors. So anyways, जो Mesolithic period है, that Mesolithic period is from 10,000 BC to 6,000 BC, and this should not be 1,000, this should be 3,000. Neolithic period is about 6,000 to 3,000 BC. And then we'll talk about discovery of first metal, which was copper, and that is why the word here is chalcolithic phase. That copper, but however with the help of discovery of copper now, because metals are much stronger, you can give them desired shape much easily. So because of that, agriculture further prospered. So the next classification है chalcolithic, which represents both stone tools, lithic as well as chalco, which basically means copper. But before that, we are talking about older stone tools, middle stone tools, and new type of stone tools. All of them represent different phases of human history. तो आप लिख सकते हो. Indian Stone Age is classified in 3 categories. Indian Stone Age is classified in 3 categories. Again, based on the criteria which I discussed, which geological age I'm talking about, what type of stone tools I'm talking about, and what type of subsistence we are talking about, right? Paleolithic age, इसी में लिख लेना. It can be further classified into lower Paleolithic, आप टाइम ब्रैकेट में टाइम नहीं लिखते रहना, 2 million years ago to 100,000 BC. Lower Paleolithic, Middle Paleolithic, 100,000 BC to 40,000 BC, and Upper Paleolithic, 40,000 BC to 10,000 BC. 40,000 BC to 10,000 BC. I will not go into detail of all of these sub-classifications, frankly, because it is not important, but one thing should be very clear, that if I divide this entire timeline from prehistory to modern times in 1 year, तो ये जनवरी से नवंबर जो है हो चुका है. Whatever is happening right now from proto-history period to current time, that is happening in the month of December. I am dividing this entire time period into 1 year. तो जो Paleolithic age है, that represents the largest phase of human history. 2 million years ago, and again, this is not entirely, it is just history of Homo sapiens. This is history of many hominid species, our ancestors, such as Homo erectus, or even before that. But we do find the most important economic activity here is hunting and gathering. Write down next bullet point. In Paleolithic age, life started at the foothills of mountains. Life started at the foothills of mountains, where river was narrow and easy to cross. Where river was narrow and easy to cross. Easy to cross. Write down the next point. Caves were natural places for residence. Caves were natural places for residence. The man survived on animal hunting and food gathering activities. The man survived on animal hunting and food gathering activities. Stone tools were irregular shaped. Stone tools were irregular shaped. Stone tools were irregular shaped. And one more point you can write. Paleolithic people left the dead without performing any rituals. Paleolithic people left the dead without performing any rituals. Left the dead without performing any rituals. ये जो dead body analysis है, this is also a very useful tool by historians and archaeologists to know about a particular settlement. It can tell you lot about particular type of settlement. जैसे first it can tell you about their religious affiliation. If there is a dead body with lot of objects kept inside the coffin, then this signifies that some sort of belief in afterlife, that maybe all of these objects will be helpful in the afterlife, which comes from again some sort of religious belief, some power, some belief in supernatural power. तो एक तो सबसे पहली चीज आपको dead body analysis tells you this. At the same time, it can also tell you about social differences. You find a dead body with lots and lots of expensive things, and at the same time dead bodies with nothing. Then that signifies perhaps the dead body with expensive thing, it belongs to some king or one of the rich person perhaps of the society. So such type of analysis, mortuary analysis, can tell a lot about people of ancient period, especially जो prehistoric period है, about their religion, about society, social stratification, etc. So that is why historians have used all these techniques. That how do we effectively use archaeology? Archaeological जो sources हैं, उनको हम सही से कैसे interpret करें? How do we get information from archaeological sources? And we have many established techniques of doing that. One of them will be mortuary analysis. Give the next head. Achha, some important locations are, write down. Some important locations are Sohar River Valley in Punjab. Sohar River Valley in Punjab. Mirzapur in Uttar Pradesh. Sohan River Valley. Thanks. Sohan River Valley, thanks. Sohan River Valley in Punjab. Mirzapur in Uttar Pradesh. Munger Rajgir in Bihar. Munger and Rajgir in Bihar. Munger, Rajgir in Bihar. Kurnul Caves in Andhra Pradesh. Kurnul Caves in Andhra Pradesh. Kurnul Caves in Andhra Pradesh. तो जहाँ पे भी natural cave formations हैं across the country, you do find some evidence of Paleolithic settlement. I don't think these locations are important. जो locations important होंगे, I will keep telling about them. In Paleolithic age locations, I don't think, except Mirzapur, because Mirzapur is important. Again, Paleolithic, Mesolithic as well as Neolithic settlement, and Bhimbetka also. Bhimbetka में जो evidences हैं वो lower Paleolithic age and Mesolithic age के मिलते हैं. So especially Mesolithic age के लिए जो Bhimbetka है, caves जो है मध्य प्रदेश के, वो बहुत important हैं. So give the next heading, Mesolithic age. Mesolithic age. Mesolithic, it literally means this middle age between old and new. You have this middle age. Lithic means tools, but यहाँ पे जो tools हैं, they became much sharpened, and these tools are called microliths. तो जो Mesolithic period का जो सबसे remarkable feature है, a type of stone tools which are now called microliths. That stone tools are much more sharpened with lot of piercing capability. Killing animals becomes easier with that, right? So refined stone tools called microliths. This is the most remarkable feature, but there are other things also. We find earliest evidence of domestication of plants and animals. How do we know domestication occurred in this period? इसके भी देखो बहुत सारे तरीके हैं. Animals which are found in wild and animals which are domesticated, their jaw pattern will be different. And doing this analysis of jaw pattern, you can actually find out that if skeleton of an animal remain, that is a domesticated animal or a wild animal. Similarly, the plants which are found in wild and plants which are domesticated, there will be some differences in their genetics. So there are many tools, mainly genetic tools, which can be used to find out that if we are talking about a domesticated animal, domesticated plant, or a wild animal. So the earliest domestication hai, that goes to Mesolithic period. So you can write down few things here. Hunting gathering, this represents hunting gathering stone age. This represents hunting gathering stone age. By using refined stone tools called microliths. The environmental condition during this period became more suitable for survival, with warming of the climate, earliest domestication of animals and plants are seen in this period. Earliest domestication of animals and plants are seen in this period. Dogs, cattle, sheep, where some of the earliest domesticated animals agriculture such as wheat, barley, was also practiced in some regions, Artificial homes made of bamboo and grass have been discovered. Artificial homes made of bamboo and grass have been discovered. The first evidence of disposal of dead in the form of burial, the first evidence of disposal of dead, in the form of burial comes from rock shelters at Mirzapur, So this is one site. Other important sites are Bhimbetka, in Madhya Pradesh, very famous for its cave painting. जो भिम्बेटका के जो केव पेंटिंग्स हैं represent a lot of things about life of people. For example, dancing scene, hunting scene, things like that. So very famous for its cave painting. Bhimbetka, Lakhu Diyar in Uttarakhand, Bagor in Rajasthan, Ratnapur in Gujarat, Loteshwar and Ratnapur in Gujarat, among many others. इसमें दो साइट्स आपके काम के भिम्बेटका, you have to remember Bhimbetka, and Lakhu Diyar also, that represents many abstract painting. So Bhimbetka, Lakhu Diyar, Mirzapur, ये तीन साइट्स यहाँ पे आपके काम के जो आपको याद रखना है. I don't think apart from that you have to remember any other name here. And next is Neolithic period. Neolithic period. जो Neolithic period है, now this represents basically the earliest villages in the Indian subcontinent region and proper agriculture as an economic activity. Hunting and gathering still is there, that has not completely subsided, But agriculture also becomes an important economic activity, and a proper planned agriculture into a village settlement, that is a feature of Neolithic settlement. Stone tools are much more refined. Metal still is not known. People still do not know about metals. Copper का discovery बाद में होता है. But stone tools ही use करके, but agriculture. अब जैसे for example, the very first village in the Indian subcontinent, that is a place called Mehergarh in, right now it will be in Balochistan province of Pakistan. The first village of Indian subcontinent that is found in Mehergarh. Then you have all these places in Uttar Pradesh, especially Mahagara and Koldiwa जो place है. This represents, ये जो 3 places हैं, this represents the first rice cultivation, not just in India but anywhere in the world. That first rice cultivation anywhere in the world, that happens at these 2 places in Uttar Pradesh, right? So you have some of the earliest Didwana region जो है, that again represents one of the earliest agricultural settlements. Similarly, you have a settlement in Kashmir called Barzoham, not famous as such for its agriculture, but famous for its culture called pit dwelling culture, that you find many pits. Historians had a lot of debate कि pits किस चीज के लिए. One of the explanation was that because we are talking about a colder climate, कश्मीर में बहुत बार ठंड हो जाती है, so during cold climate people may have lived in these pits, underground pits basically. But now the most accepted theory is that maybe these pits were used for storing grain, food grain in tough times. So यहाँ पे जो कुछ sites हैं वो आप important है, and some of the features of Neolithic settlement you should know. So just write down few things here. It represents beginning of food production. It represents beginning of food production. Beginning of food production. And domestication of plants and animals on large scale. Domestication of plants and animals on large scale. Large scale. Thus, write down, thus there is a shift. Thus there is a shift in subsistence strategy. There is a shift in subsistence strategy from hunting and gathering, to animal rearing and agriculture. To animal rearing and agriculture. Agriculture was needed. Agriculture was needed to fulfill the requirement of growing population. To fulfill the requirement of growing population. Growing population. Write down the next point. This age also marks the beginning of village settlement. Village settlement such as Mehergarh, in Balochistan, Pakistan. Mehergarh in Balochistan, Pakistan. Is considered as the first village of Indian subcontinent. Is considered as the first village of Indian subcontinent. Write down the next point. People used pottery. People used pottery to store their food grains. To store their food grains, as well as to cook and eat the food, as well as to cook and eat the food. So I told you about mortuary analysis. Now the next set of analysis which is very useful in archaeology, that is pottery analysis. What type of pottery you are going to find out. So depending upon that, it talks about a certain type of people, certain group of people. जैसे you are going to find, जब आप आर्य शर्मा पढ़ोगे, कोई भी हिस्ट्री का टेक्स्ट बुक पढ़ोगे, you are going to find these terms like that this site represents northern black polished ware. This site represents red and black pottery. This site represents painted grey ware pottery. So pottery has been used now by historians to signify a particular type of culture. Again, culture not in the sense how we use culture. I'm talking about a particular type of settlement. So, people with common similarities, commonalities, that they are using common set of subsistence activity, common set of tools, things like that, right? So pottery is a very, very important tool. I will take about like 15-20 minutes in later classes, which I will explain the most important pottery culture in India. There are four, mainly there are four: ochre colored pottery, red and black pottery, northern black polished ware pottery, and grey ware pottery. तो ये चारों हम डिटेल में डिस्कस करेंगे लेटर क्लासेस में, एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट व्हाट डज इट सिग्निफाई. बट हियर आई एम जस्ट इंट्रोड्यूसिंग दिस कॉन्सेप्ट दैट व्हेन यू डू नॉट हैव रिटन सोर्सेज, देन इवन अंडरस्टैंडिंग व्हाट टाइप ऑफ पॉटरी, उसका ज्योमेट्रिकल पैटर्न कैसा है, उस पर जो डिजाइंस बने हैं वो कैसे बने हुए हैं, किस मटेरियल का बना हुआ है, what technique may have been used in developing this pottery, that tells a lot about the type of people we are talking about. So even pottery is used as a source of history by historians sometimes, and India has many distinct type of pottery culture. So that is why I mentioned this point, that pottery has been used in Neolithic period. Some of the important sites are मेहरगढ़, I already have told you. अब ये जो कुछ sites हैं important हैं. So first will be Kuldihwa and Mahagara. Kuldihwa and Mahagara. इसमें बस एक लाइन में लिख लेना. So this will be near Prayagraj, Allahabad, former Allahabad. Or in UP, simply write down in UP. This site provides the evidence of earliest rice cultivation in the world. Earliest rice cultivation in the world. Cultivation in the world. Mehergarh, I already have told you, it is considered as the first village in the Indian subcontinent region. Another very famous site is Barzoham, that you should also know. Barzoham in Kashmir. In Kashmir. Right down here. It is famous for pit dwelling culture. Pit dwelling culture. So we are talking about many underground pits, which again, there is a debate that was it used for human beings by themselves or was it used for storing food grain. But nonetheless, these pits do exist. Pit dwelling culture as well as a burial where master and dog are kept together. A burial where master and dog are kept together. I just hope for the best for that dog. I hope he died a natural death. Not because the master needed help in afterlife. Right? So, that is also a site. Then there is another site called Chirand in Bihar. इसमें बस एक लाइन में लिख लेना. Weapons made of animal bones have been found here. Weapons made of animal bones have been found here. Then you have Musky and Halur in Karnataka. Musky and Halur in Karnataka. Here you can write people domesticated sheep and goats. People domesticated sheep and goats. So we have found that people in this region in Karnataka, they are cattle herders, animal rearing on a much larger scale. So these are some of the important Neolithic settlement. Most important name which I have to remember, that will be Mehergarh, Mahagada, Barzoham. ये 3-4 नाम जो शुरू में लिखा है, इन साइट्स का लोकेशन एंड व्हाट दे आर फेमस फॉर. इससे ज़्यादा I don't expect anybody is going to ask anything else. First of all, questions from this topic. Rarely UPSC पिछले 10 साल का देखा होगा शायद कोई एक क्वेश्चन होगा. I do not even recall even a single question. But nonetheless, important to understand the significance of prehistoric age. Let's take a break here. I will talk about Indus Valley civilization and then I will discuss about Chalcolithic phase. Because I want to start an important topic in today's class. So first I will talk about Indus Valley civilization and later we will talk about what exactly is Chalcolithic age and how things changed in this period. हाँ, ये कर्नाटका में. So once I complete about Indus Valley civilization, we will discuss about Chalcolithic age. Before that, I have a question. We use the word civilization. What does it mean exactly? Like sometimes we use this word civilization. In case of Neolithic age, we are not using it. Chalcolithic age, we do not use it. But in case of Indus Valley, we are using the term civilization. What does it represent? Buildings, settled life. What will be the meaning of settled life? Even Neolithic people had some sort of settled life. Just one thing I think which I don't think that's very important, but जो Neolithic phase है उसको बहुत बार हम Neolithic revolution भी बोलते हैं. Often Neolithic age is called Neolithic revolution, mainly because how much we progressed in agriculture. Even though revolution, often the term revolution means that sudden change, that in a very short span of time, a sudden change happened. That led to revolution. But in case of Neolithic age, which by the way represents a phase of about 3000 years, we still call it Neolithic revolution. And the reason is very simple, that this 3000 year in the time span of thousands of years, which includes Paleolithic, Mesolithic also, this phase represents a sudden growth of agricultural produce. Hence, there is a term called Neolithic revolution for Neolithic age. Anyways, what does civilization mean? What does it entail? Constant? Can you, like, for example, be more specific? That can we, one thing should be very clear, that civilization is a very abstract term. Civilization को define करना बहुत मुश्किल है, बहुत abstract term है. Civilization का as such कोई exact definition नहीं है. Following certain norms and regulations in what exactly? In polity, in economy, okay, ठीक है, things like that. What else? What can be other features of civilization? Planning. A planned way of life. Town planning. Okay, that's also a very valid point, that civilizations are often associated with town culture. That is actually correct in a way. What else? Yes. That's also very valid. So I will repeat. The term civilization has a very abstract connotation. It's very difficult to define civilization, but nonetheless, there are few things which can be used to let's say, for example, signify that this particular settlement we can call it civilization. More than often, it actually starts with some sort of urban settlement. And we have to now again think in terms of various perspectives. Just let's say, for example, if I'm talking about the political setup, then I'm talking about many people living simultaneously. The moment many people are living simultaneously in a particular location, we need to have some sort of rules and regulations. As long as we are hunter-gatherers, we lived the best life as hunter and gatherers. The moment we started settling into societies, we created a lot of problems for ourselves. And even today, we are trying to solve those problems. And in the process of solving, we are creating more problems. And then we are going to solve those problems. And this cycle will go on. So, jo hunter-gatherers ke baad, the moment you started settling, so civilization will always start with, not always, but more than often it starts with some sort of town settlement, that we are talking about a dense population with proper planning in terms of urbanization. Also, but it's not just that. We are talking about a lot of other aspects. For example, in political development, we are talking about proper set of rules and regulations, some sort of laws, some ruling class perhaps who are to ensure that these laws are actually fulfilled in the society, right? To fulfill that, you require some sort of political and social institutions. That is also very important. Then in economy, that is about political setup. In economy, often it will involve not just agriculture. So civilization, first of all, will always and always start with agricultural surplus. If there is no agricultural surplus, then बाकी चीजें हो ही नहीं सकती हैं. If few people can produce enough so that all of us can eat, all of the people can eat, then rest of the people can be involved into other type of economic or social or any type of activity. But the moment that is not possible, जैसे such in the case of, let's say, Neolithic age or even before that, so agricultural surplus will always be a prerequisite for any type of planned settlement. That goes without saying. Without agricultural surplus, nothing is possible. That there are few people who are producing for all of the people or most of the people, and then other people can be involved into other type of economic activity. So civilization will also mean that we are talking about, apart from agriculture, many other type of economic activities, such as, let's say, in ancient time, it can be mining, it can be metallurgy, it can be trading, right? Merchant groups, lot of things. Some sort of basic manufacturing also, not exactly industrialized manufacturing, but some sort of manufacturing centers also. So in economic activity, economy is not limited to agriculture. It includes a lot of things. Similarly, in terms of, we talked about society also, we will often civilization, often, again, not necessary, but often it will mean large social stratification, that society is divided into classes. The basis of that stratification can be a lot of things. One stratification, one basis which has been found across time and space is gender. But however, gender classification in case of hunter and gatherers, very difficult. But at the same time, many anthropologists and historians believe that women were perhaps equal to men as hunter and gatherers. When we started settling ourselves, then this entire notion of patriarchy, that women are supposed to do household work and men are supposed to do outside work, that starts emerging. Again, this is just one theory. I'm not saying that this is a very scientific, well-established theory here, but this is one of the theories. So social stratification के देखो बहुत सारे basis हो सकते हैं. One basis which again permeates across all society, that is class. That people, higher class, and class often is decided by your economic status. But in case of India, that is not necessarily true. That in case of India, the social stratification was also based on, let's say, Varna classification or caste classification, right? So these also became basis of social stratification. So I will repeat, civilization will also have some sort of social setup, social stratification. Not necessarily, but in most of the cases, we do find this as a evidence. And often civilizations are also associated with form of writing. That people are no longer just communicating as spoken languages, but they are also writing. So civilization as a term can mean a lot of things, despite the fact that it has a very abstract connotation. And it can mean things in society, in politics, in economy, in social political institutions, etc., etc. So we are talking about Indus Valley civilization. Indus Valley civilization. I will repeat, I am taking a jump here. Neolithic period, even though Indus Valley civilization mainly occurred in the northwest frontier, in the region of Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, Gujarat, some part of Pakistan, right? So the northwest frontier है, यहाँ पे most of the settlements are concentrated in these locations, some part of Uttar Pradesh also. But इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि बाकी जगह settlement नहीं है. बाकी जगह settlement है, they are Neolithic or Chalcolithic settlement, right? They still, do not have not a well-established town as such, but settlements are there. They are still using agriculture as the most important economic activity. So, however, because this is the first urban settlement of India, and in fact one of the first urban settlements in the world, this topic is very important, Indus Valley Civilization. And I'm taking a jump here in the sense that copper was the first metal which was discovered, but Indus Valley Civilization represents what we call Bronze Age civilization, that people no longer just knew about copper, but they also knew how to make bronze from it. So some sort of metallurgy, not exactly some sort of metallurgy, the metallurgical technique of Indus Valley people hai, that was quite advanced in fact. So not only first metal has been discovered, but now people, they know the ways that how we can further enhance the properties of this metal. That is what metallurgy is all about. So advanced metallurgical techniques were also known. So this phase represents Bronze Age civilization, not Iron Age, because iron is still not known. In Indus Valley civilization, people did not know about iron. So it represents Bronze Age civilization. It can be divided into three parts. The first part is called early Indus Valley civilization, or early phase, mature phase, and late phase. जो early phase है, that early phase is from about 3300 BC to 2600 BC. Mature phase is from 2600 BC to 1900 BC, and late phase is from 1900 to 1300 BC. Lot of questions about Indus Valley civilization remain a mystery to us. We will discuss that. But in these three phases, early phase and late phase represent rural phase. That represents rural civilization. जो mature phase है, that represents urban civilization. So again, recall your Neolithic settlement, that in Mehergarh you have the first village of Indian subcontinent as early as perhaps 5000 BC. Then there are many years from 5000 BC to 2600 BC. Agricultural produce definitely increased in this period of time. Again, remember that any type of well-established settlement will always start with agricultural surplus. And agricultural surplus in ancient time, it was dependent upon many accidental factors. For example, you found a variety of rice जिसका production ज़्यादा है. You find suitable climate, that maybe rainfall is better. You found plain जहाँ पे agriculture जो आप ज़्यादा अच्छे से कर सकते हो. Many of these factors may have been accidental, but nonetheless, once those factors were present, agricultural produce increased, agricultural surplus occurred, and that led to establishment of the first town civilization in the Indian subcontinent known as Indus Valley civilization. इसका जो discovery है, this was also accidental. Excavation work was going on during British period. In about 1870s, people found the first city, Harappa, which is right now in Pakistan, on the river Ravi, bank of river Ravi. And many people had different ideas. Some historians, some archaeologists thought that this site maybe represents the place where Alexander fought with Porus, because that war is famous in many historical records in Europe. That Alexander, when he came to India, he fought with Porus. Or maybe it represents Chandragupta Maurya or Ashok, who are mentioned into Greek text written by Indica. So people had many ideas about it, that ये जो Harappa है, what does it represent? Similarly, Mohenjo-daro was the second city which was discovered. But only in 1927, now it was announced that a new civilization has been discovered. That this is an completely new civilization which we had no idea about. And then more and more excavation occurred, and we found more and more cities. Many of these cities were found around Indus River or its tributaries. That is why it was called Indus Valley civilization. However, later many more cities were found along with Saraswati River, which no longer survives. But Saraswati का जो remnant है, that is Ghagra Hakkar River, which still flows through Rajasthan. तो जो Ghagra Hakkar River है, वहाँ पे हमको settlements मिलते हैं. और जो सरस्वती का what could have been the ancient root of Saraswati flowing through Haryana, there also you find many settlements. So many settlements were found along Saraswati River also, ancient Saraswati River. And people thought that it can be called Saraswati civilization also. But then there are settlements which are neither at Indus River or at Saraswati River, such as there are some great settlements in Gujarat, which, जैसे धौलावीरा. धौलावीरा is one of the largest and one of the most advanced settlement of Indus Valley civilization. And that is neither at Indus Valley, Indus River or at Ghagra Akkar River. So the best, most accepted term here is Harappan civilization. That because Harappa was the first city, so historians often have developed this methodology कि कोई भी civilization में जो सबसे पहला discovery है, हम इसको नाम देंगे. So even though I am calling it Indus Valley civilization, but at the same time, it is also called Harappan civilization. Indus Valley because initial settlements were found around Indus River, जैसे जो हड़प्पा है, that is along river Ravi, which is a tributary of Indus. Mohenjo-daro itself is found at the bank of Indus River. So this is also called Harappan civilization. Now this is perhaps the only time period where I am only going to use archaeology as my source to know about various aspects of this civilization. Yes, I'm going to talk about their political setup, their society, their religion, their urban features. So urban features, so फिर भी I can answer those questions, or historians can answer those questions with lot of authenticity. That okay, these are the urban features we are talking about. But बाकी इसके अलावा जो भी क्वेश्चंस है, इकोनॉमी के बारे में भी बहुत सारी चीज़ें बता सकते हो. बट इसके अलावा बाकी जो भी चीज़ें हैं, that what type of social setup we are talking about, what type of religious development we are talking about, what type of political setup we are talking about, all of these are matter of speculation. I will tell you all the prevailing theories and also the most accepted theories. But before even I tell you, I must say this, that all of these questions with respect to society, politics, religion, all of these are matter of speculation. We do not have exact answers. Maybe when we will be able to decipher the information, we will have more information about all of these aspects. However, archaeology remains the only source, and archaeological sources are used to decipher about Indus Valley civilization. तो जो early phase है, from 3300 BC to 2600 BC, it basically represents some of the sites again around Indus River, but rural sites. Some of those sites are also present in mature civilization. जैसे कोट दिज्जी is a very famous place. It is just opposite Mohenjo-daro, along Indus River पे बैंक पे एक साइड पे मोहनजोदारो है, दूसरे साइड पे कोट दिज्जी है. Both are right now in Pakistan. So कोट दिज्जी, for example, represents early settlement, indications of early settlement also, and mature phase also. Mehergarh represents early settlement, but we do not find this into mature civilization. And this map is very important for us. This map here now represents all of the most important cities of Indus Valley civilization. There may have been hundreds or thousands of sites. Frankly, very few excavation has occurred. जो excavation work है, that is very less. Simply because there are a lot of human settlements into many of these locations. So excavation बहुत ज़्यादा करना possible भी नहीं है. Right? So Harappa जो है, this was the first city which was discovered. Then you have Mohenjo-daro, which was the second city. Some of the largest settlements into India, both Harappa and Mohenjo-daro right now are in Pakistan. Some of the largest settlements in India will be Rakhigadi, Dhaulavira, Lothal, Surkotara. These are some of the settlements. So settlement wise, I will do discussion also कि किस settlement में हमको main चीज़ें क्या मिलती है, वो भी हमारे लिए काम का है. But before I come to that part, that in particular settlement, what do we find? Let's do a general analysis of this civilization, right? So time period is जो 2600 BC to 1900 BC. We are talking about an urban civilization with well-established economic framework, social framework, political framework, very efficient municipal government. Some of the great urban features, even today cities of India, they cannot match the features of urban features of Indus Valley civilization, right? In terms of how much they focused on hygiene, on cleanliness, on waste management, on privacy, on public infrastructure. एंड दैट इंफॉर्मेशन वी कैन से विथ श्योरिटी. बाकी जो इंफॉर्मेशन है वो करना बहुत मुश्किल है. एंड जो लेट फेज ऑफ सिविलाइजेशन है, द लेट फेज ऑफ सिविलाइजेशन, that again is found into locations. For example, you find in Gujarat, some of the locations are found in Maharashtra also, such as Daimabad. Many locations in the region of Haryana, part in Pakistan, we find this. Again, this here represents rural civilization. So एक जो question है that why this civilization declined, this remained a very debatable question. Even today it remains debatable. However, most of the historians now are coming to a consensus that the civilization declined mainly because of climate change, mainly because of floods in some areas and droughts in some other areas. Changing of monsoon pattern, all of that led to decrease of agricultural productivity. And now agricultural produce is not enough to feed cities, and that is why cities were deserted. And in the course of time, civilization declined. This is the most accepted theory. इससे पहले एक जो accepted theory ये था that a group of tribe called Aryans, they came from Central Asia or Persia, and they invaded because these cities did not invest a lot into their defense. Aryans had iron weapons, they had chariots, they had horses, and they conquered these territories, and these people were now forced to settle into other part of the country, most importantly South India. That led to this division called Aryans and Dravidians. So first thing first, ये जो आर्यन द्रविडियन जो पूरा डिवाइड द वे इट वाज पॉपुलराइज्ड, इट वाज यूज्ड बाय ब्रिटिशर्स एंड इट वाज आल्सो यूज्ड बाय मेनी ऑफ द हिस्टोरियंस इन इंडिया, एंड इट वाज इन फैक्ट वन ऑफ द पॉपुलर नैरेटिव इन हिस्ट्री. बट एज ऑफ नाउ दिस थ्योरी हैज बीन रिजेक्टेड बाय ऑल ऑफ द हिस्टोरियंस और मोस्ट ऑफ द हिस्टोरियंस. So most accepted theory is that decline occurred because of climate change, mainly because of drought, a significant drought. And by the way, this drought did not just occur in India, but it occurred in many parts of the world. And because of that, many civilizations declined, such as Chinese civilization, Mesopotamian civilization, or Egyptian civilization. So many civilizations declined around the same time period. And जो पूरा debate of Aryan versus Dravidian है, उसको लेके भी जो है बहुत सारा certainty हमारे पास है. That actually if you do genetic analysis of North Indians and South Indians, then you do find that our ancestors can be divided into two groups, which are called ancestral North Indians and ancestral South Indians. But ये जो ancestral North Indian और ancestral South Indian, that ancestral North Indians are Aryans and ancestral South Indians are Dravidians, which are basically people of Harappa. That theory has no basis. In fact, all of us, we share our lineage, some sort of genetic lineage with people of Harappa, चाहे वो people of north हो या people of south हो. So जो हड़प्पन्स है, they are our earliest ancestors. तो ये जो पूरा claim है that India belongs to one group of people more than other group of people, that's not a very valid claim. Because if you are talking about in terms of who migrated here first, then perhaps the answer will be people of Andaman and Nicobar. Because they did not intermingle a lot, especially there are still some islands who have remained isolated for thousands of years. Perhaps they represent one of the earliest migration in India. After that, there are many phases, many waves of migration, and we are a result of many of those migrations as well as the earliest migration which may have occurred from Africa. So when you read history basically ensures that you get rid of a lot of prejudices, a lot of preconceived notions. That this notion that this region belongs to one group of people more than other group of people, or for that matter any part of the world, that's not a very good notion, because entire history is history of migration. But nonetheless, India can be proud of one thing, that we are a civilizational entity, we are a civilizational nation. We have a heritage of about 5,000 years. We have a continuity in those 5,000 years, which perhaps only one other country can claim, that is China. Apart from that, no other country can claim that there is a civilizational continuity. Right? There are some ancient civilizations, जैसे for example जो Persian civilization है, that what modern day Iran is, right? जो Greek और Roman civilization है, that what day modern some of the European countries are. But Egypt जो है, Egyptian civilization, what modern day Egypt is. But these civilizations perished. You find an element of continuity in Indian civilization, that people, the practices which perhaps people of Harappa did, we still follow those practices. Some of those things like worship of nature and worship of different gods, we still follow those practices, right? So we will talk about that as we go forward. We will talk about a lot of those things. So we as a nation can be proud of one thing, as a civilizational nation. But as a civilizational nation, then also it is our responsibility to understand that this division based on caste or religion, all of that frankly does not make a lot of sense. Anyways, just write down a few things here. Give this heading Indus Valley Civilization. It can be divided into three phase, early, mature, late. Early, mature, late. टाइम पीरियड भी आप लिख लेना. The early and late phase, represent rural settlements, while mature phase represents first urban civilization in India and one of the first in the world. First urban civilization in India and one of the first in the world. It extends from northwest India to Pakistan as well as northeast Afghanistan. Write down next point. People of Indus Valley knew how to write however we have not been able to decipher it. Archaeology remains the most important source. To know about them. This civilization is known for many important innovations, urban features, and trade network with contemporary civilizations. तो इसको लेके भी डिबेट था दैट हाउ दिस सिविलाइजेशन इमर्ज. तो जो मेसोपोटामियन सिविलाइजेशन है, जिसका अभी रेमेनेंट व्हाट मॉडर्न डे इराक विल बी, तो जो मेसोपोटामियन सिविलाइजेशन है that existed before Indus Valley civilization, although there is a overlap also, that the civilization declined by 2000 BC. जो Mesopotamian civilization है, that declined by 2000 BC. Sorry, even earlier 3000 BC. So there is an overlap here between Mesopotamian civilization and Indus Valley civilization. So a group of historians felt that perhaps an offshoot of that civilization became Indus Valley civilization. But this theory now has been rejected. All of the theory now pinpoint that this in itself emerged as a new civilization. And there are many theories to pinpoint that. The most famous one is that even though scripts of Mesopotamia or Egypt, they have been deciphered, we do not find any commonality from what people of Indus Valley used. Right? यहाँ पे जो script है and what script was used in these regions, they are not same at all. अगर किसी भी type का offshoot होता, तो similarity होता. By the way, जो linguistic analysis है, that is proper, well-developed scientific analysis. Languages and scripts have their own time. They have their own age. They emerge into a particular historical perspective. They evolve into historical perspective. And many of the languages die also. Many of the scripts die also. For example, we no longer use Brahmi script, which was used in ancient India. Right? We no longer use Kharosthi script. But at the same time, we know that Brahmi inspired another script called Siddhamatrika during Gupta period. And Siddhamatrika inspired all the scripts which we use in North India especially. Jैसे Devanagari is the most famous one. Right? So languages and scripts, they have their own history depending upon the type of people who used them. Right? Many historians, many linguists have done some great work that tracing the history of India just by the languages. That how local languages, local dialects evolved, and that can tell a lot about how history changed from time to time. Some of the most interesting books are written on this matter. So the linguistic analysis है, that is a very important source of history. So जो Indus Valley civilization है, this is considered by historians as an independent civilization, not an offshoot of any of the contemporary civilization. Okay, known for its lot of features. So I'm going to provide a overall perspective before I come to analysis of all the important sites and what are they known for. By the way, वो भी important है, इनका location कहाँ है, what important findings, जो भी unique findings जो भी हैं, वो आपको पता होना चाहिए. तो वो भी हम discuss करेंगे. But before that, let's discuss some of the outstanding feature. Egyptian civilization predates Indus Valley. This is remnant of Harappa, the first city which was discovered. Not a lot has been left, and the reason is very simple. Because when Harappa was discovered, this was also the time when railway was being constructed by Britishers. So the engineers say they used a lot of bricks from Harappan settlement. That tells you two things, that Britishers really were thieves, and second, that the bricks were so strong that it was used in modern construction. So it tells you about the engineering marvel of people. In fact, some of the sites which have survived, this is Mohenjo-daro. यहाँ पे lot of things have been preserved. जैसे Mohenjo-daro, this is a very famous citadel that most of the towns of Indus Valley, it can be divided into two categories. Most of them, not all of them. Most of them. That there is a higher platform and then there is a lower platform. Higher platform often had a citadel. Maybe the most accepted theory is that maybe जो ruling class हैं, जो elites of society हैं, they may have lived in these citadels, and जो lower town hai, normal people, they may have lived in this lower town. So this is, for example, citadel of Mohenjo-daro. This here again is one of the great public infrastructure of Mohenjo-daro, which has been called public bath. What exactly purpose it served? Was it some sort of ritual, some religious significance? Very difficult to answer. But it was a public bath. And you find across many Indus Valley sites that such type of public infrastructure, which is used by all of the populace, that is quite common. There are many more findings of Indus Valley. For example, if you go to National Museum of अभी भी चले जाओ, बगल में ही है. It will hardly take 15-20 minutes. जब एक बार आप art and culture का class हो जाए, you should definitely go and visit National Museum. You will be able to appreciate a lot of things, and you will have a visual reference in front of you. Type of paintings or architecture or sculpture, etc. So one of the oldest sculpture of dancing girl, a very famous technique called lost wax technique, that still has survived, that was found at Mohenjo-daro. Similarly, a very famous seal Across Indus sites, we find that carving of seal on a particular work, that was quite common. जैसे this seal is often called Pashupati seal. Lot of people have called it Proto Shiva, that the worship of Lord Shiva, it may actually go back to Indus Valley civilization. Many historians do not believe it, but some historians find that worship of Shiva जो है, Lord Shiva, that goes back to Indus Valley civilization. There is another reason why historians feel this to be true. Because when Aryans, the most accepted theory about Aryans is that they came from outside. I will discuss about all of the possible theories in the next class. In next class itself, we are going to talk about Aryans. But the most accepted theory is that they came from outside. When Aryans came to India, जो worship of phallus worship है, ling worship, that was actually frowned upon. It was something which Aryans did not like. But in the course of time, of course, ling worship became very popular. And we do find elements of phallus worship in case of Indus Valley civilization, right? So that is also a basis that why some people think that this seal here, which is called Pashupati or Proto Shiva, that represents perhaps the earliest worship of Lord Shiva, which still is quite popular in India. Again, just one theory. How accurate that is, it is very difficult to answer. Another great site is Dholavira, one of the most developed site found in Gujarat. So while other sites are divided into two parts, that there is a citadel and there is a lower town, so Dholavira, that can be represented into three parts, that there is a castle, there is a middle town, and then there is a lower town. So this has a 3-tier classification. But जो सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग थिंग है धौलावीरा का, that is its water reservoir system. जो पूरा water harvesting, distribution, storage, all of that represents some great engineering marvel. That water conservation, its storage, transportation, all of that is a very, very important feature in case of Dholavira. Recently, it was inducted as UNESCO World Heritage Site. पढ़ा होगा आपने news में. And this is the first site of Indus Valley civilization which has been inducted as UNESCO World Heritage Site. This here is Lothal. बहुत कम चीजें रहती हैं, but whatever is left, we can know few things. That uniformity, for example, uniformity of the size of bricks or the fact that these bricks have survived, that tells you about their engineering technique. Lothal is very famous because it was a port city. It has a dockyard where large boats were parked here. We also have found a fire altar. Fire altar जो अभी भी यज्ञ जो हवन कुंड जैसा कुछ होगा, thing like that. So this fire altar may represent some religious significance, but what exactly? Again, it is very difficult to answer. So Lothal, again a site of Gujarat, very famous, that it is a port city, it has a dockyard and as well as fire altar. You find various type of seals, जैसे this seal, even today historians are trying to figure out that what is happening here. This seal here represents that a woman is being flanked by two men. And then you have a person who represents half tiger and half male, right? So what exactly does it represent? Is it some sort of religious procession where maybe this woman is being sacrificed? That is also a theory. Another theory is that maybe these two people are either fighting for her or she is a queen who they are protecting. So there are many theories that this is again a very famous seal, that you have these mythical creatures here, half tiger, half human being, and a woman who is being flanked by two men. Is it for protection, respect, or some sort of religious sacrifice? All of that is open to debate. This is also a great finding from Indus Valley civilization. At Surkotara, that horse bones have found. Initially, there was a theory that people of Indus Valley civilization did not know about horses. So that, in fact, UPSC ने एक बार क्वेश्चन पूछा था इस पे. एक स्टेटमेंट उन्होंने दे रखा था that people of Indus Valley did not know about horses. अब वो that is a 3-statement question. I will discuss this question in later classes. But when I remember doing analysis of this question, and this question was picked from a book which was written in 1980s. And in that book, it was actually written that people of Indus Valley civilization did not know about horses. But this is a recent discovery, but not exactly as very recent, that you have found horse bones at Surkotara. Then across Indus Valley, this is a very famous common feature, that carving of seals and carving of different type of animals. Those animals are real as well as mythical. For example, some animals are actually unicorns. Let's say you have elephant also, but at the same time you have unicorns also. So mythical animals are also represented here. You also have evidence of swastika, which was often initially thought that this marks coming of Aryans to India. But now we find that swastika was present even during Indus Valley civilization. And in fact, the symbol of swastika has been popular across many civilizations, including Indus Valley civilization. What was the purpose of the seals? That is again this is quite debatable. Some people just say Indus Valley civilization का जो economic system है, was it barter or was it coinage? This question still has not been answered. That people used barter system of exchange, or अगर coin use करते थे, so they were the seals or perhaps lot of these objects. Shell working, that was also very famous, that you find many necklaces, many art craft tradition was quite popular. Jैसे Chanudaro is a place which is very famous for bangle factory, that you have found bangle factory at this location. And then this is a very famous script which has been called 10 Indus script with 10 symbols, found at Dholavira. But again, we do not know what does it actually mean. And we have found such type of writing at many cases. This is called 10 Indus script found at Dholavira, but we have not been able to decipher it, right? So let's discuss all of the features one by one, starting with urban feature. Give this heading, urban feature. Urban feature. Right down here, Indus cities are noted for planned urbanization with focus on hygiene and public infrastructure. For example, write down in bullet points. Most of the cities had a two-tiered structure. A citadel and lower town. Next, roads crossed each other at right angle. Next, many public infrastructure such as granary, public bath have been found. Write down the next point. The municipal government placed a high priority on hygiene. For example, well developed trash collection system, trash collection system, wastewater drainage system, and a separate water supply system to households, and a separate water supply system to households have been found in many of the cities. Next bullet point, write down. People were conscious about their privacy. People were conscious about their privacy. For example, houses only opened to inner courtyards and smaller lanes, and windows were placed such that ample of sunlight can enter, However, people from outside cannot see inside the house. So these are some of the remarkable urban features. We are talking about a well-planned settlement, roads cutting each other at 90 degrees. All houses are connected to a water supply system and a wastewater drainage system. Both of them are, by the way, separate from each other. Both of them are well covered. Even a smaller house, they are also connected with proper water supply system. Privacy is a very important feature, that जो doors हैं कभी road side कभी नहीं open होंगे, वो street के दूसरे side open होंगे. Windows will be at higher location. कि direct जो भी है direct line of visual, that will not be accessible from outside. So public infrastructure, granaries, warehouses, public baths, that is found in many sites. So these are some of the outstanding urban features of Indus Valley civilization. Now this is one thing where we can say things with certainty. In many of the questions, the answer will be matter of speculation. So let's start with economy first. Give the heading economy. What type of economic setup we are talking about? So first thing first, write down. In many cities, seal carving was followed, which is cutting of patterns into the face of a seal, used for stamping of goods. Used for stamping of goods. These seals were decorated with many animal figures such as elephants, tigers, buffaloes. These seals were decorated with many animal figures such as elephants, tigers, buffaloes. Right? तो seals का एक जो purpose होता है वो stamping of good होता है. That is obvious. But did this seal also were used as some sort of coinage system? That question remains unanswered. तो आप इसी में लिख सकते हो. Did people of Harappa use these seals as coin? Use these seals as coins, or followed barter, remains unclear. Write down the next point. In economy itself, Hadappans had a trade relationship with many contemporary settlements extending from Central Asia to West Asia. They built boats, dockyards, wheeled transportation, ox cart जैसे ox cart अभी भी यूज करते हैं ना, बैलगाड़ी, wheeled transportation. In fact, I should also tell you a very interesting fact here, that people of Harappa, people of Indus Valley civilization, there was a name for it in the contemporary civilizations. जो Mesopotamian records हैं, which by the way have been deciphered, this region is called Meluha, right? So this entire region in Mesopotamian records, it is called Meluha. So which is again quite interesting. Right now we know by their contemporary names, but what were they called in ancient times by people of Harappa themselves? What were these cities? We do not have that answer. Maybe we will get this answer. As of now, we know them by their modern names. Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, these are modern names. Now, what exactly was the name in ancient times? An entire settlement is called Meluha in Mesopotamian records. But what are the names of these individual settlements? We have no way of knowing that as of now. Write down the next point. And by the way, we have found an extensive trade network from India to Mesopotamia, Oman, many places throughout the world. We have a dedicated trading center, in fact. And I may have this on map also. I may have in this map also. There is a settlement here called Shortugai, very far away from all the city settlement, right? So Shortugai hai, because this is, even though this is part of Harappan settlement, but not exactly a town. This is a trading outpost. This clearly is a trading outpost which is able to maintain trading with settlements in this location. जैसे यहाँ पे एक जो बहुत famous archaeological complex है, this is called Bactria Margiana Archaeological Complex, right? BMAC बहुत बार इसको बोलते हैं. So Shortugai was used to have trade network with all these settlements in this area. Similarly, you have here an outpost called Sukta Gendor, which maintained trading with Mesopotamia. So we have found trading, such type of trading outpost in the case of Harappan civilization. We will talk about individually also their significant feature, but right now I'm only talking about the most outstanding features. Right on the next point in economy itself. Harappans also engaged in shell working, Harappans also engaged in shell working as craft tradition. अब एक बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग फीचर ये है कि दिस आर प्रॉपर ट्रेडिंग कम्युनिटीज. जो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटी अपार्ट फ्रॉम एग्रीकल्चर इज ट्रेडिंग इटसेल्फ, बिकॉज जो इम्पोर्ट है दैट इम्पोर्ट इज मोस्टली ऑफ रॉ मटेरियल. वॉट एवर आर्कियोलॉजिकल सेटलमेंट्स वी हैव फाउंड, इम्पोर्ट इज ऑफ रॉ मटेरियल एंड देन फिनिश्ड गुड्स आर बीइंग सप्लाइड टू डिफरेंट पार्ट ऑफ द वर्ल्ड. जैसे हड़प्पन्स डिड नॉट इन्वेस्ट इन टू मेकिंग दिस ग्रैंड मॉन्यूमेंट्स और टेम्पल्स. यू डू नॉट फाइंड ग्रैंड मॉन्यूमेंट्स एंड टेम्पल्स कंपेयर टू लेट्स से फॉर एग्जाम्पल पिरामिड ऑफ इजिप्ट और अदर टाइप ऑफ स्ट्रक्चर जो टेम्पल्स बाद के जो रूलर्स बनाएंगे, या स्तूपास एंड all of this grand architecture we do not find in case of Harappa. Similarly, we also do not find that people, even though religion played a very important role because there are many religious deities across seals, but at the same time जो belief in afterlife है, belief in afterlife ये कैसे आप पता करते हो? In the absence of written record, mortuary analysis, that you do analysis of dead bodies. We have found that dead bodies, there are some things kept as part of dead body, but the amount of those things are very less compared to what they are in case of Mesopotamia. But interestingly, lot of things which are found in Mesopotamia, they are of Indian origin. So even though people knew that there is a demand that few things have to be kept as part of afterlife, but they themselves are not following it. They are producing it, but they're not following the same set of beliefs. So understanding the demand of the other contemporary areas, also understanding that how we can get raw material supplied from these areas, this is known to many of these locations, right? तो आप लिख सकते हो. Many goods, especially raw materials were imported. From Iran, Afghanistan, China, such as lead, copper, jade. Jade is a type of stone. Jade. Similarly, valuable metals such as gold, silver, material for craft such as seashells, pearls, and precious stones such as lapis lazuli, where important items of trade. Lapis lazuli is a very famous precious stone, blue colored stone hota hai. Just go and search about it, you will find that what I am talking about, a blue colored stone known for its very unique color. We find evidence of trading in lapis lazuli during this period also and during later period also. So this is about few things about economy. Now let's talk about their political setup. Give the next heading. Polity. What type of political setup we are talking about? अब इसको लेके भी देखो दो theories हैं. These are not. We have discovered many cities. right? One thing is very clear, that all of these cities are interconnected with each other, because things which are being produced in one location, we find those things into other location. So one thing is very clear, that all of these cities are interconnected. But what is this level of interconnectedness? Is it limited to economy, or does it also involve politics, in the sense that are we talking about an empire or a kingdom with all of these important centers, or are we talking about municipal governments, independent municipal governments, who are taking care of these cities individually, even though there is a trade relationship between them? तो ये जो interconnectedness है, does it only include economy, or it also includes politics, political setup? This question again is difficult to answer. There are two theories. One theory tells us that we are talking about one kingdom and all of these cities are part of that kingdom, but despite that, जो म्यूनिसिपल गवर्नमेंट है, इट एंजॉयज लॉट ऑफ ऑटोनॉमी. दैट इज अ कंसेंसस कि जो म्यूनिसिपल गवर्नमेंट ऑफ दिस सिटीज हैं, दे एंजॉय लॉट ऑफ ऑटोनॉमी, right? So a decentralized system, however, part of one centralized empire. That is one theory. Another theory is that all of these are important cities and they have their own system of governance, very similar to what Greek civilization was. By the way, Greek civilization existed many years after Harappa, but just to give you some context, that when I use the word Greek civilization, then I'm talking about many cities which were more or less autonomous from each other, right? So maybe Indus Valley civilization, that is also very similar in that manner. But other theories exactly opposite to it. And it is again very difficult to answer this question. If let's say, for example, there is a kingdom, जैसे एक बहुत famous, do I have this slide? I don't have that slide, but there is a very famous finding from Mohenjo-daro, which is called Philosopher King, that the bearded statue of a person has been found. And he's often called Philosopher King, that he is a king, he may be a king, right? So we are not talking about some grand monuments or some grand palaces, but there is a citadel, and that citadel may represents ruling class. So what type of ruling establishment we are talking about? A monarchy, an oligarchy. Monarchy basically means one person rule, a king basically with absolute power. Or we are talking about an oligarchy. Oligarchy basically means that few people together are ruling. So again, this question remains open to answers, because frankly we do not have enough evidences. So in terms of political setup, in terms of municipal government setup, one thing is very clear, that we are talking about an efficient government with lot of autonomy, but are they part of a larger kingdom? That question cannot be answered. तो आप लिख सकते हो इसको. In terms of polity, Hadappans did not invest into grand monuments or structures, which may have signified some royal insignia. In fact, there are two theories regarding system of governance. First, that there was a single state encompassing the entire civilization. This is supported by similarity in artifacts, similar planned settlements, planned settlements, standard weights and measurements, standard weights and measurements, among others. Among others. Second theory, hypothesizes that a number of leaders represented each of the urban centers, Thus, there was no one centralized, all-powerful state. There was no centralized, all-powerful state. But various centers of power. Various centers of power. Give the next heading, society. देखो जब भी हम सोशल हिस्ट्री पढ़ते हैं, देयर आर फ्यू थिंग्स विच वी फोकस अपॉन. Any type of institutional hierarchy, that is society hierarchical in nature. If there is hierarchy, then what is the basis of that hierarchy? In case of, let's say, for example, modern urban India, that hierarchy is simply based on class. Not simply, it is more complex than that. But caste as a phenomena is not witnessed a lot in urban India, right? Even though it is witnessed to some extent, but not exactly to the same extent what it was or what it is even today in many rural part of India, right? So caste, for example, is a very important part of social hierarchy, or gender is very important part of social hierarchy. तो social hierarchy अगर है तो उसका basis क्या है? Class जो है across civilization you will find, across entire world you are going to find that class always is a type of social hierarchy. But apart from that, there can be many other social hierarchies also. So what are they and what is the basis? अब इन इस केस में तो basis तो आप आंसर कर ही नहीं सकते. But is there a social hierarchy? We can perhaps answer this question. There are 2-3 theories, there are 2-3 evidences that yes, we are talking about. इसमें तो बहुत clear है. If there is a civilization, there must be some sort of differentiation, stratification. But one thing is also very clear, that this stratification which existed during Indus Valley civilization, that is very less compared to what it is right now. Right now society is very unequal. Inequality बहुत ज़्यादा है. I'm not saying is that Indus Valley civilization is perfectly egalitarian. There is no inequality. But at the same time, it is less unequal. Right? Lower settlements हैं, there are similarities in the type of structure. There is a planned settlement, there is a citadel by the way, but citadel is a smaller part of the entire town settlement. Citadel may represent ruling class, elite class, but जो lower town है, so there is a clear difference between citadel and lower settlement. But जो बाकी का settlement है, there is more or less similarity as such. Similarly, when you do the mortuary analysis, dead bodies analysis, you do find that certain dead bodies, they have been buried with lot of expensive things, and by the way, practice real, not burning of dead body. So we do find that certain dead bodies, they have expensive things, but at the same time, many of the dead bodies, they contain nothing. So it does talk about some sort of social hierarchy. तो आप लिख सकते हो. Harappan's artifacts display an extraordinary uniformity. extraordinary uniformity. The existence of social hierarchy, cannot be ruled out, however, its basis cannot be answered. Society was less unequal. Compared to later civilizations. So that is all I can say about the social setup, right? इसी में एक और line आप लिख सकते हो, because I'm talking about society, we can also merge the religious development in this period of time. Write down in next bullet point. Harappans religious practices cannot be answered with certainty. However, many seals have been discovered which may represent religious rituals as well as male and female deities. जैसे एक बहुत फेमस सील मिलता है हमको फ्रॉम मोहनजोदारो, which is often called fertility goddess. So people worship both male deity as well as female deity. Similarly, all these mythical animals, they also may represent some sort of religious significance, or a half man and half animal which I showed you, that also may represent some sort of religious significance, right? But the most accepted theory is that they may have been worshipper of various forces of nature, not exactly nature worshippers, but at the same time many elements of nature, for example things which are relevant for them. जैसे जो मदर गॉडेस या फर्टिलिटी गॉडेस जो हम बोलते हैं, that she may represent fertility for agriculture, that people want more agricultural produce. So that is a significant thing for them, and that is why fertility goddess is being worshipped, right? So difficult to answer, but there are many seals which represent male deities, female deities, right? And many religious processions. For example, the seal which I showed you, that a woman is being flanked by two people, and then there are two mythical creatures who are, in fact, one is ahead of them and one is behind them, following them. So that represents some sort of religious procession. Anyways, I will continue this discussion in the next class. With the decline of civilization, we will talk about Chalcolithic period, and then we will discuss the next topic, which is Vedic age. ये जो next phase of civilization जो है, distinct from Indus Valley civilization, but a very important one, that is Vedic age.